The Galactic Council chamber hung suspended in the void between dimensions, a structure so ancient that even its creators had been forgotten by time itself. Within its crystalline walls, representatives from 473 species gathered to discuss the newest arrival to the cosmic stage. Ambassador Thelquin of the Vortal hegemony, whose civilization had mastered gravity manipulation before humans had discovered fire, rippled with disdain. His form, a constantly shifting mass of controlled gravitational fields, pulsed with irritation as he addressed the assembly. "They call themselves humans," he said, his translated voice carrying contempt. "Carbon-based, oxygen breathers. Average lifespan barely a century. They achieved faster-than-light travel only 16 of their years ago. By all measures, they are unremarkable, primitive, hardly worth our attention." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. The holographic display showed Earth, a small blue marble orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in an unfashionable arm of the Milky Way galaxy. "And yet," interrupted Sage Krillmit of the Eternal Archive, her 6 crystalline eyes reflecting eons of accumulated knowledge, "they have done something unprecedented in the short time since achieving interstellar capability." The chamber fell silent. When a sage of the Eternal Archive spoke, even the most arrogant species listened. "Show them," she commanded. The display changed. Part 2. The Broken Worlds. The first image was of Kepler 442b, homeworld of the Zenthari people, or rather, what remained of it. The Zenthari had been a proud race once. Their golden cities had stretched across 3 continents, their technology rivaling that of many council species. But in their hunger for rare earth elements, they had strip-mined their world to the bedrock. Toxic waste had poisoned their oceans. Their atmosphere had collapsed. By the time they achieved space travel, it was too late. Kepler 442b was dead. The surviving Zenthari, fewer than 1 million souls, had scattered across the galaxy in generation ships, refugees begging for sanctuary. Most species had turned them away. The Council had offered them a single barren moon in an isolated system. It was more than many species received. "This image," Krillmit continued, "was taken 3 months ago." The display shifted to a current scan of Kepler 442b. The chamber erupted in shocked chatter. Ambassador Thelquin's gravitational field flickered with disbelief. Kepler 442b was green. Purple forests stretched across continents. Blue-green oceans lapped at restored coastlines. The atmospheric readings showed oxygen, nitrogen, the perfect balance for Zenthari respiration. And there in orbit hung a massive human terraforming station, its solar collectors gleaming like a second sun. "The humans arrived 8 years ago," Krillmit explained. "They brought seeds from their own world. They brought technology, but more than that, they brought themselves. 300,000 humans currently live on Kepler 442b, working alongside the Zenthari. They've been there for 8 years. They plan to stay for at least a century more until the ecosystem is self-sustaining." "What do they demand in return?" asked Ambassador Thelquin suspiciously. "What tribute? What resources?" Krillmit's crystalline form seemed to smile. "Nothing, they ask for nothing." "Impossible," Thelquin snapped. "No species acts without self-interest." "The humans disagree," Krillmit said quietly. "They have a saying, 'We were given a garden once, we nearly destroyed it, now we know better.'" Part 3, the Song of the Vex. The display changed again, showing a different tragedy. The Vex were unlike most species in the galaxy. They were crystalline beings, their consciousness existing as harmonic frequencies within their silicon-based bodies. Their civilization was a symphony, literally. They communicated through resonance, built through vibration, experienced existence as a complex, beautiful song that had echoed through their system for 10 million years. Then the stellar plague had struck. A rogue pulsar's emissions had swept through their system, disrupting the fundamental frequencies of their biology. The song had become discordant. The Vex had begun to shatter, their minds fragmenting into chaos. Within a generation, their civilization had collapsed. The survivors could barely communicate, living in agonized isolation, each trapped in their own broken melody. The Council had tried to help. The Vortal sent gravitational specialists. The Zenthari in better days had sent quantum mathematicians. The Eternal Archive had shared every piece of harmonic research from 100 civilizations. Nothing had worked. The Vex were dying. 208 years ago, Krilmit said, a single human ship arrived at the Vex homeworld. It carried 53 humans, musicians, physicists, mathematicians, and what humans call composers. The display showed the ship, unremarkable, built from salvaged parts and outdated technology. Compared to the vessels of the Great Council species, it was little more than a tin can held together with determination and hope. For 200 years, Krilmit continued, her voice filled with something that might have been awe, those humans stayed. They lived among the Vex. They studied their fractured harmonics. They learned to communicate through resonance, though it took them decades to master even the simplest frequencies, and they tried. The chamber watched as the historical footage played. Generations of humans working alongside the suffering Vex. Human children growing up learning to speak in harmonics. Human scientists dedicating entire lifetimes to understanding a biology fundamentally different from their own. Human musicians composing symphonies they themselves could barely hear, using instruments designed for alien senses. 17 human generations, Krilmit said. Most were born on the Vex homeworld. Many died there having never seen Earth. And then, 2 years ago, the display showed the moment. A Vex crystal, flickering with unstable harmonics, suddenly stabilized, its frequencies aligned, and then another, and another. Like a wave rippling through their entire civilization, the song returned. The humans had done it. Through sheer, stubborn persistence across 2 centuries, they had found the cure. They had restored the symphony. The chamber fell into stunned silence as they watched Vex and humans celebrate together, harmonic resonance and joyful shouting creating a strange, beautiful cacophony. What did they ask for? Ambassador Thelquin asked again, his tone less certain now. The Vex offered them mining rights to their asteroid belt, Krilmit replied. Offered them their entire supply of rare heavy metals, offered them anything they desired. She paused. The humans asked only that they be remembered as friends. Then they left, moving on to the next species that needed help. Part 4, the pattern over the next hours, Krilmit showed them more. The humans had found the Kresh, an aquatic species whose oceans were evaporating due to their star's expansion, and had built solar shields the size of moons to protect their world, buying them 10,000 years to develop evacuation plans. They had discovered the Moth Singer colony ships, drifting through the void for millennia after their homeworld's sun went supernova. Humans had towed them to a new system, helped them establish a colony, and taught them human agricultural techniques adapted for their biology. When the ancient Torval Empire collapsed into civil war, humans had arrived not with weapons but with mediators. They had negotiated, compromised, found common ground. The war that should have consumed 1,000 worlds for 1,000 years had ended in 3. The humans had helped the crystalline Sharam develop new computational methods when their traditional mathematics failed. They had taught the predatory Krilton how to synthesize proteins, ending their need to hunt sapient prey. They had saved the hive mind of Antares VII from a mimetic virus by developing quantum-shielded communication protocols. Species after species, world after world, always arriving when hope was fading, always staying as long as needed, always asking for nothing. I don't understand, Ambassador Thelquin finally admitted. His gravitational field had settled into something resembling confusion. What do they gain? What drives them? Krilmit gestured and a new hologram appeared. A human woman, middle-aged by their standards, with graying hair and tired eyes. She wore the simple uniform of the Human Aid Coordination, an organization that, as far as the Council could determine, operated on donations and volunteer labor. This is Dr. Sarah Chen, Krilmit said. I asked her the same question. The hologram activated, showing a recording of Krilmit's interview with the human. Why? Krilmit asked in the recording. What does humanity gain from this? Dr. Chen smiled wearily. Do you know what was happening on Earth in the year 2047? Of course you don't. Why would you? We were nobody, nothing, just another species killing ourselves slowly. She pulled up an image, Earth, but wrong. Its oceans were brown, its ice caps were gone. Its atmosphere glowed with pollution. We nearly ended ourselves, Dr. Chen continued. Climate collapse, nuclear brinksmanship, pandemic after pandemic, resource wars. We were hours away from extinction, literally hours. There was a moment when our entire civilization teetered on the edge, and it could have gone either way. She pulled up another image, a young woman standing in front of what looked like a dying forest. This is Dr. Kenji Matsuda. She was a climate scientist. When things were at their worst, when everyone was panicking or giving up, she said something that changed everything. She said, "The universe doesn't owe us anything, but we owe it everything." Dr. Chen's eyes glistened with tears. "We almost died alone in the dark, sage Krilmit. We almost destroyed the only garden we'd ever known. And when we finally pulled back from that edge, when we finally learned to work together instead of tearing ourselves apart, we made a promise." "What promise?" Krilmit asked. "That we'd never let another species die alone in the dark if we could prevent it. That we'd never stand by while another world burned. Because we remember what it's like to be on the brink. We remember the terror, the despair, and we remember the miracle of actually surviving." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "You ask what we gain. We gain the knowledge that the universe is a little less dark, a little less lonely. We gain the hope that maybe, just maybe, intelligence and compassion aren't mutually exclusive. We gain the garden we almost destroyed, now spreading across the stars." She smiled. "And we gain the privilege of being the people we wish had existed when we needed help." The hologram ended. The chamber was utterly silent. Part 5. The decision Ambassador Thelquin spoke first, his gravitational field pulsing with something that might have been shame. "The Vortal hegemony has existed for 47 million years, he said quietly. "We have mastered technologies that would seem like magic to most species. We have reshaped star systems. We have touched the edge of the universe itself." He paused. "And in all that time, we never thought to simply help, not without demanding something in return, not without calculating profit. We built monuments to our greatness. The humans build gardens for others." Krilmit nodded slowly. "Which brings us to the vote before this council. A motion unprecedented in our entire history." The display changed one final time, showing the formal proposal in the glowing script of the council's official language. Proposal: grant humanity full guardianship, status, rights, and responsibilities. Authority to intervene in developing civilizations to prevent extinction-level events. Access to council emergency resources and protected seed banks. Right to request council assistance for humanitarian missions. Responsibility to protect and shepherd younger species. Duty to preserve life and facilitate flourishing across all forms. Status. This position has never been granted before. It effectively makes humanity the shepherds of the younger races and the keepers of the cosmic garden. "This is a radical proposal," Krilmit said. "We would be granting an incredibly young species enormous authority, the power to reshape worlds, to decide the fates of civilizations. The responsibility to be what the humans themselves would call the adults in the room." "What if they abuse it?" asked a representative of the Silicate Collective. "What if this compassion is merely a strategy? What if, in 1,000 years, they become conquerors?" Krilmit gestured to the displays showing dozens of human efforts across the galaxy. "Then we will have been wrong," she said simply. "But I have studied humanity for longer than most species have existed. I have watched them for the 8,000 years since they first developed agriculture. And I have seen the pattern." Her crystalline eyes swept across the assembly. "Humans are not perfect. They war among themselves. They make mistakes. They can be stubborn, reckless, and frustratingly idealistic. But they have something most of us lost millions of years ago. They remember vulnerability. They remember what it's like to need help, and that memory drives them to be the help they once needed." She let that sink in. "I vote yes," Krilmit declared. "Let the youngest species be the oldest souls. Let the gardeners tend the cosmic garden." One by one, the representatives voted. The Zenthari, whose world had been reborn, yes. The Vex, whose song had been restored, yes. The Kresh, whose oceans still flowed beneath human-built shields, yes. Even Ambassador Thelquin, after a long moment of contemplation, pulsed with agreement. Yes, the vote was unanimous. 473 species, some older than Earth's sun, granted humanity guardianship of the galaxy's vulnerable. Epilogue. The garden grows 20 years later. Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Garden of Hope, humanity's newest and largest aid vessel. Before her stretched the Whirlpool Galaxy, where 17 species had recently achieved interstellar travel and 8 were facing existential crises. Her communicator chimed. A message from Earth, from her granddaughter who had just graduated from the Academy of Xenobiology. "Grandma, I've been assigned to the Kepler 442b rotation. I'm going to walk in the purple forest you helped plant." Sarah smiled, tears streaming down her weathered face. 3 generations of her family now worked in the aid coordination. Her son was helping the crystalline Gen develop new communication protocols. Her daughter was engineering atmospheric processors for the failing colony of Tau Ceti. The garden was growing. Behind her, the bridge crew, humans, Zenthari, Vex, and a dozen other species working side by side, prepared to jump to their next mission. A species called the Varelli had sent a distress signal. Their son was dying. "Set course," Sarah commanded. "Let's go do what we do best." As the Garden of Hope accelerated toward faster-than-light speeds, Sarah thought about Dr. Matsuda, who had died 150 years ago but whose words had echoed across the stars. "The universe doesn't owe us anything, but we owe it everything." Humanity had nearly destroyed itself once. They had stood at the precipice of extinction, stared into the abyss, and somehow, miraculously, stepped back. Now they made sure no one else had to face that darkness alone. They were the gardeners. And the garden, Sarah thought as the stars streamed past, was very, very beautiful. End.